Thank you all for being here and for receiving me so nicely. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, dear members of the Socialists and the Democrats group in the European Parliament. Dear friends, good morning to all of you. Let me start by thanking the invitation to speak to you today in the European Parliament. Moreover, allow me to make a special thanks to our group president, Irache Garcia Perez, not only for giving me this opportunity, but also for a role as the bearer of our progressive values in the House of European democracy in the past 5 years. On behalf of the Portuguese Socialists, and if I may, of all European Social Democrats and Democratic Socialists, muchas gracias, Presidenta. As the new leader of the Portuguese Socialist Party, I stand on the shoulders of giants. From Mário Soares, the founding father of our democracy, to Jorge Sampaio, an outstanding reference in the Alliance of Civilizations, from António Guterres, our current and brave Secretary-General of the United Nations, to António Costa, one of the most respected leaders in the European Council in the last years, with his brilliant and tireless capacity to forge agreements and to always find innovative solutions for the present and the future of Europe. All of them shared and contributed to the proud DNA of Portugal's Socialist Party. Each one, in his own time, faced different challenges, but kept alive the dream of a strong and united Europe, open to the world and the lighthouse of human rights and equal opportunities for all. The Socialist Party has always been the most European political force in my country, and we have always kept our commitment towards the European community of freedom, peace, justice, and solidarity. I want to assure you that I take the vision and legacy of my predecessors as an inspiration, and I commit myself to continue their path as leader of the Socialist Party. Dear friends, during the last 5 years, we lived under challenging and exceptional times, as if the exception were the new normal in our lives. As we emerged from a global pandemic, we faced the war in our continent together with an economic and energy crisis. Almost 4 years after the start of COVID and 2 years since the start of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, we find ourselves at a crossroad, where the choices and the decisions we take will have a tremendous and structural impact through the years to come. Now is the time to think where we stand and choose our political compass for the future. As we usher in a new political cycle with approaching European elections in June, we need to make a collective reflection. At the forefront of our concerns must be the rise of far-right ideologies across the European continent, threatening the very bedrock upon which our democracies were built. It is an ideological onslaught that demands a clear and strong action from those of us who hold the principles of a community of care, where the other, the different, is not feared but embraced. As progressives, we must stand firm against the tide of populism, nationalism, and xenophobia that seeks to undermine the foundations of our shared European identity. The task before us is not merely political, but moral. It is a call to defend the values that have shaped our union and foster the spirit of collaboration and mutual understanding. Unfortunately, I fear that we cannot count with a broad democratic wall, which would include almost all the non-populist political allies. The silence, or should I say the complacency, from the center-right political parties which are willing to compromise its principles for the sake of political short-term gains represents a danger that cannot be ignored. We have been seeing these trends spreading around now, in Spain and Italy, in Sweden and in Finland, and now also in Portugal. We may as well see these in the next European Parliament. The danger lies not only in the rise of the far right, but also in the incapacity and lack of political will of the traditional center-right, which instead of defending their ideas, prefer the tacit acceptance of the extremist rhetoric and policies. Our duty as socialists and democrats is to firmly reject any political deal with the forces that despise our fundamental values. The EPP family is preparing a manifesto with worrying concessions or even mirroring the extreme right, with dramatic drawbacks on policy areas like migration and the Green Deal. For us, it is crystal clear when it comes to extreme right. No means no. No coalitions, no parliamentary agreements, no hidden trades behind the scenes, no soft copies of their hard agenda. Our stance should be strong and coherent before and after any election day. We are different from them, and we are very proud of it. As we navigate this turbulent political landscape, we must reaffirm the EU as a geopolitical actor with a strong and united voice worldwide, as we have been doing by supporting Ukraine, and as we must do by supporting the two-state solution between Israel and Palestine as the only way for peace in the Middle East. On the other hand, here at home, we must remain steadfast in our commitment to building a European Union that delivers concrete outcomes for its citizens. Our Europe of values should also be a Europe of results. First, we still need economic and social emergency responses. Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the soaring energy prices, the disruption of many value chains, and the overall global uncertainty will have long-lasting consequences for our economies. Only a strong social Europe with decent and well-paid jobs and fair economic transfers can prevent the social unrest. For that, we need to bring the salaries up and the bills down. Second, at the heart of our mission should continue to be the battle for a modern European welfare state. We must be unwavering in our dedication to ensuring that all citizens have access to quality health care, education, and social services. And this should also entail an innovative approach to find common solutions to common problems, even on health and housing. As recently stated by our common candidate to the European elections, Nicolas Schmidt, Europe should be seriously involved in solving the housing crisis. These are not luxuries or mere market assets, but essential components of a just and equitable society. By championing the European welfare state, we demonstrate our most basic commitment, that every citizen should be granted the means to live with dignity. Their rights should be our fight. And the European Union of social rights is the best medicine against the extreme right. The far right may scream louder than us, but we will always be better at listening to the people and understanding their most essential needs. We, the socialists, have the strong power to come up with policies based on empathy and not on fear. Let's use it. Dear friends, we should face the future challenges of our economy bearing in mind the valuable lessons from our recent past. In the last 2 decades, Europe struggled with 2 major economic crises: the sovereign debt crisis since 2008 and the economic crisis since 2020, following the lockdown scenario lived during the pandemic. But the 2 crises were dealt with in a radically different way. Unlike the traumatic experience of the first case, which led to a serious fragmentation of our economic union, Europe was able to show that a continental-level economic crisis should be managed not with austerity, but with solidarity. Despite the unprecedented times of the pandemic, the European economies grew and recovered very quickly, and an unemployment level near reached the worst foreseen scenarios. This was the result of a prompt, coordinated, comprehensive, and daring response that the Union was able to give at a time and which could not be more in contrast with the legacy of the previous crisis. And make no mistake, this is the result of a coordinated action by our socialist prime ministers, our socialist commissioners, and yourselves, our members of the European Parliament. If it was not for the action of our family, the right wing would never have pushed for these decisions. We were able to create safety nets that protected worker jobs, the stability of our social securities, and the liquidity of European companies. The creation of SURE and the Next Generation EU was groundbreaking. It created European responses to a European problem. As we socialists have always said, it is vital to have permanent instruments that can be used to stabilize our economies in times of emergency. 4 years ago it was COVID, today it's the war, tomorrow we don't know. In the next European term we need to seize the momentum and keep fighting to create a joint and permanent stabilization instrument to respond to crisis. As we all know in this room, investment is the basis of present and future prosperity. And the last years showed us that it's possible to design joint solutions that promote the growth of both our Union and the one of its member states. In order to achieve this, we must raise our level of ambition and turn it into a new generation of EU budgets. We need to have the necessary resources to boost a new industrial policy, carbon neutral, focused on European strategic clusters and combined with large-scale reskilling and upskilling programs. And we must do all of this while being aware of the challenges posed by enlargement of the European Union. While the prospect of expanding the EU represents an opportunity to foster stability, security and prosperity, it also presents a considerable challenge to our European framework that demands careful consideration. We need to ensure that the EU is ready to receive them in its ranks. The worst thing we could do to Ukraine and other candidate countries would be to offer them entry into a union without the capacity to help them rise and develop their economies and societies. Dear friends, allow me to conclude. 2024 is a special year for us in Portugal. In April this year, we celebrate our fight for democracy against the dictatorship. We will be celebrating the 5th anniversary of the Carnation Revolution that ended the longest dictatorship in Western Europe and created the basis for our democracy. As Mário Soares made clear in Strasbourg while in exile, for us socialists and for the Portuguese Democrats as a whole, our European dream was always a condition to restore democracy in our country. There is no halfway house between dictatorship and democracy. We cannot ignore what Mário Soares' generation learned from experience. The values we take for granted are not irreversible. Populism undermines democracy. Racism undermines the dignity of citizens and severely attacks the rule of law. So 50 years later, here we are, once again, ready to stand for what we believe. Let us embark on this new political cycle with a profound sense of duty and a resolute commitment to the principles that unite us. Jacques Delors, whose European legacy we celebrate here in Brussels this afternoon, said in his farewell speech to this European Parliament, "Europe is built on competition that stimulates, on cooperation that strengthens, and solidarity that unites. That is why we need to stand together, side by side, work tirelessly to win the next elections. First, our general election in Portugal, and then our European elections in June. Our vision must be bold, our defense of European values unwavering, and our pursuit of European Union that delivers meaningful benefits to its citizens unrelenting. The choices we make this year will shape the future of our continent, and I am confident that together we can overcome the challenges and build a stronger, fairer, and more inclusive European Union." Thank you.